When I was thinking of the topic for today, I was thinking, what is a perfect example of what selflessness is like? It is a parent of a newborn child. A parent of a newborn child is completely and totally 100% focused on the child and not themselves. You are giving away absolutely everything you have for that child for what seems like forever, but it's not, but it seems like that way. You become selfless. Now, we're concluding our series today. This is the 5th week of a 5-week series entitled, Be a Blessing. By being a blessing, we mean that the way we interact with other people either lifts them up or tears them down. If we are a blessing, our interactions make other people's lives better. That's what we are called to do. We are called to make other people's lives better. We're called to be a blessing. And we have looked already in our series at 4 ways we can do that. Today we're going to look at the 5th. The first one was to be humble. What is humility? Humility means I put others before myself. We serve the needs of others before we serve ourselves. And the example we looked at of Jesus in his life was the time when he was with his disciples in that room, that upper room, and they were having a meal together. Now, the custom of the day was, because all the roads were mud or dirt, there's no gravel, no pavement, and they wore sandals, when they came into the room, their feet were filthy. So you can't have filthy feet in a clean room, so they had to do something. So the custom was that somebody would be stationed at the door, that when you walked in, there would be a basin of water, and the person at the door would wash your feet. Now, it was supposed to be a servant, but if there wasn't a servant, it was the person of lowest position in the group. Well, they came into that room that day for that meal. The custom was for somebody to wash the feet, but nobody did the job. So they're at the meal. They've gone through the meal. Jesus is aware of this. Jesus knows what's happening. Jesus has a plan in mind for a lesson. So as the meal is over, he gets up as they're all sitting there, and he takes his cloak off, and he takes a towel and wraps it around his waist. And then he goes around the table from person to person, and he takes the basin of water, which was probably at the door, and takes it to each one of them and takes off their sandals and washes each of the disciples' feet. And then he takes the towel off around his waist and he dries their feet. And he goes from disciple to disciple to disciple. Now, what's so incredible about that? Well, Jesus was the leader, the teacher, the rabbi, the one of highest position in the group. If there was ever somebody who should not be doing that, it was Jesus. But Jesus did that. And as he was going around the table, no doubt they all thought to themselves, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be washing my feet. Somebody else should do that. So when Jesus was done, he says to them, all right, do you see what I've done? Now you do it. You become the person who washes the feet of everyone else. You exhibit humility. That's how a person who is a blessing acts. Secondly, we looked at the need to be forgiving. We learned that forgiveness is not an emotion. Forgiveness is a decision. Forgiveness is a decision that says, I'm going to give you something as an offender to me, something you don't deserve, mercy. And I'm not going to give you something I believe you do deserve, which is punishment. Sounds hard, doesn't it? Well, what's our example? Jesus. God forgave us a debt by sending his Son to die for us to forgive an infinitely large debt of sin against the holy God. A debt that we could never repay, a debt greater than anything anyone could have against us. And he says, if I could do that for you, why could you not forgive anything from anybody? Thirdly, we looked at the need to be encouraging. We need to be people that lift other people up. We need to be people that make other people feel better. We need to be people that inspire other people, that help them go through the struggles of life. Why should we do that? Again, because of what God has done for us in Christ. And the example we looked at was when Jesus died, in the temple, there was a curtain. And the curtain separated the most holy place from everything else in the temple. That most holy place was the place where God's presence came in the temple. And when Jesus died, the curtain, the separation of God's presence from the people was torn in two. The idea being that now, because Jesus died on the cross for our sins, we all can enter into the presence of God through Jesus Christ. And he says, if I have done that for you, you need to be encouraging. You need to lift others up. But we didn't just see Jesus encouraging people in his death. He also encouraged people in his life. And we look through stories of Jesus and how he interacted with people. He was constantly doing that. When people would come to him and they would exhibit some kind of faith in him, Jesus would say, "That's great. That's amazing. That's incredible." And he would do that time and time again. He would constantly lift people up. He wouldn't say when they did something great, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's nice. Whatever. No, Jesus was constantly reinforcing the good things that people were doing. He was encouraging them. And by the way, what gets encouraged gets repeated. Jesus was an encourager. Last week, we learned the fourth thing, which is be giving. A person who is a blessing is a person who is a giver. Now, I'm not talking about money necessarily here, but what I'm talking about is the idea that, have you ever been around somebody who was a taker in your relationship? Everything they could get out of you, that's what they wanted. It was all about what you could do for them. So how did that relationship go? Was it good? No, it wasn't. Because they would suck the life out of you. And there was nothing left. And after a while, whenever you'd see them, you'd hide. Whenever they'd call, you wouldn't answer the phone. Because people who are takers are not people that are blessings. We are called to be the opposite of that. We are called to be givers in relationship. We are called to be people who are always looking for opportunities to do for other people. We are always listening for opportunities. We get involved in their lives and we pick up clues. It's those things that husbands do throughout the year because they're trying to figure out, what in the world am I going to buy for my wife for Christmas? And if you're smart, you're listening throughout the year for clues that she's dropping, because she will. And if you pick up on them and you bring something to her for Christmas that she was dropping those hints about, you are great. Those are the kinds of people we're to be all the time. We're always to be looking for clues, listening for clues. What's going on in their lives? What need can I meet? What can I do for them? How can I satisfy that need in their life? We're givers in relationship. Again, who's our example? Romans 8. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? So God's our example of a giver. So today we want to wrap it up with our summary word. Our summary word is to be selfless. Selfless. As I always do, I go to the dictionary, and the dictionary gives these definitions. Having no concern for self, having or showing great concern for other people, and little or no concern for yourself, showing great concern for and willingness to give unselfishly to others. What is it the opposite of? Selfish. Philippians 2, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Now, if there was ever a guy who had reason to be selfish, it was the guy in the Bible named Abraham. God came to Abraham one day and he gave him a promise. He said, Abraham, you're great in my eyes, and I'm going to make you even greater. I have picked you out to be the father of my people, to be the father of a great nation. In fact, the entire earth is going to be blessed through you. Abraham, this is what I have promised to you. Now, imagine how Abraham would feel. God, the God of the universe, the God who created everything, came to him and said, God says you're great. God says, I'm going to bless everyone through you. And I can imagine Abraham thinking to himself, you know what? If God says it, it must be true. I must be great. I am going to be a blessing to the rest of the world. Aren't I a wonderful, special guy that God has chosen? So God told Abraham to go to a new land. He said, I want you to leave where you are, and I want you to go to this new land, this new place, where this great nation, this new nation, my people are going to live. And there you're going to form this great nation that the whole world will be blessed through. So Abraham and his wife Sarah took their nephew Lot and all their stuff, their flocks, their herds, their sheep, their goats, their tents, and their servants, and all their people. And they went to this new land. And it wasn't just Abraham and Sarah having a lot of stuff, but Lot, their nephew, had a lot of stuff too on his own. So they get to this new land, and it soon becomes obvious there isn't enough room for both of them in this area where they settled. And their guys, their people, are starting to fight among themselves. So Abraham responded by saying, okay, Lot, we need to make a change. There's not enough room for both of us here, so we're going to have to pick some different places to live. Now, what could he have said to Lot? He could have said, Lot, I am the father of a great nation. I am the people through whom the world will be blessed. God said so. Did God say that about you, Lot? Absolutely not. He said it about me. Therefore, I should get the best, and you should get the rest. Is that what he said? No. He said, Lot, I want you to look around. And I want you to look at the land all around us. And I want you to pick out the land that you would like to live in. So Lot looked around, and he saw an area that he described as being like the Garden of Eden. It was magnificent, beautiful. Rivers and valleys and trees and everything was there. And he said, that's what I want. And so Abraham, the father of a great nation, the father of the nation through whom the world would be blessed, the father that God had made the promise to, said to Lot, his nephew, you take the best, and I'll take the rest. And that's what he did. He had every human reason to be the one to take the best, but he gave it to somebody else. Someone asked Jesus one day, what's the best way to honor God? It's this passage in Matthew 22:36, which says, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus says there's two ways to honor God. There's two ways to give him what he is due. The first is to love God with everything you've got. Your heart, your mind, your soul, everything. And then he said the second way to do that is to love people. Now, what do these two things have in common? They have nothing to do with loving yourself. Why? Because that's already assumed. It's assumed that you will love yourself. You love yourself. When you got up today, you got dressed, you ate your breakfast, you got groomed, you did whatever you need to do so that you would be as presentable as you could possibly be when you went out into the world. Nobody had to tell you to do that today. Nobody had to teach you how to do that today. You knew that. Why? Because you knew how to love yourself. You know how to take care of yourself. And you're very good at taking care of yourself. In fact, you teach other people how to do it. Your kids. So he says, you know the way you love yourself? Turn that outward. That's how you love other people. Take that which you're very good at and do it for others. But don't just do it for them. Do it for them before you do it for you. That's what a selfless person acts like. So, okay, flesh this out. Give me some thoughts on how I can be selfless. How can I do this? Let me give you just some random thoughts on this. How do we act selflessly? Think about others' feelings before you think about yourself. Do things for other people without any intent of getting credit for them. In other words, do it, and if nobody says thank you, it doesn't even matter. Be happy when other people are happy. Be sad when other people are sad. Find people who are selfless and imitate them. Find people you know who are like that. Read books, watch videos on selfless people and begin to imitate what they do. Refrain from making other people look bad so you can look good. Make other people's time more valuable than yours. Get rid of the watch when you're interacting with people. Do things that help the most people. Give away your time for others. Give away your abilities for others. Give away your money for others. Give away your possessions for others. Be there for people in their struggles. Listen to them. Here's a counseling help for you that I've learned. When people are going through struggles, it is often more helpful and more powerful to listen than to speak. Listen to them. Be with them. Enter into their lives. You don't always have to say anything. Be patient. Forgive people. Treat other people, you know the golden rule, treat other people, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's real. It works. Selflessness is about giving your life for someone else's life. One summer morning, there was a guy named Ray Blankenship. Ray Blankenship was in his house, and he was doing the dishes after breakfast, and he looked out the window, and the window went out on the street in front of the house. Now, it happened to be that during that moment, there were some flooding rains that were coming down on his town. It was just washing everything away. And as he was standing there looking out the window, there was a drainage ditch that went by his house, and it was flooded over. And as he was standing there doing the dishes, looking out, he saw something going by, floating in that drainage ditch. And he couldn't believe his eyes. It was a person. It was a little child. That child was floating down that drainage ditch in those flooded waters. And she was in distress. He ran out of the house. And he ran toward that ditch as she was floating by. And he ran ahead of her, trying to catch her. And finally, he caught her where she was. And he was trying to figure out what to do. Well, he didn't know what else to do, so he just jumped in. And he was able to grab her and hold on to her, and they tumbled over and over again. He knew they were in danger because not only was she in that water, but a little ways down the road was a culvert. You know what a culvert is? I looked it up because I didn't know. It was one of those big, long tubes that go underneath the road that drains the water under the road. That's where they were headed for, and he knew that if she went through that, she would drown, she would die. So that's why he jumped in. But as they got closer and closer, he thought, you know what? I'm going to go with her, and we're both going to die. What can I do? So he started grabbing for anything he could. And then when they were about 3 feet away from the culvert, he felt what felt like a giant rock protruding from the bank. And he grabbed onto it as he had her in his arm, and he hung on for dear life, and he thought, if I can just hold on until the fire department gets here, we'll be rescued. Well, he did better than that, because he was able to not only grab the rock with her, but eventually they were able to climb out. When the fire department finally got there, they took them to the hospital, and all they were was treated for shock. And then they were released. And not long after that, the town in Ohio, recognized Ray Blankenship for what he had done, and he received a Coast Guard Silver Life-Saving Medal. Now, he was a man who was selfless, but he was even more selfless than everybody knew, because Ray Blankenship could not swim. He was willing to give his life for that little girl, and he almost did. That's an ultimate example of what a selfless person is like. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. God is our ultimate example of a selfless person. God gave himself. He died for us. That is selflessness. If you are a selfless person, you will have more friends than you know what to do with. You'll have a hard time keeping up with them, because people will be attracted to you. People will come to you because there are so few selfless people in the world. Be a blessing. Be forgiving. Be giving. Be humble. Be encouraging. And be selfless. Be a blessing. And you will be blessed. Let's pray.